I want you to listen to this shocking story. I thought my wife Scarlett and I were both working, but she had quit her job 2 months ago. And yet, every day she went to work at the same time and dressed the same as before. Moreover, we haven't had any physical contact recently, and she won't take me up on it, saying she's tired or something like that. I also have a feeling that she's constantly on her phone and using WhatsApp secretly. We've been married for 2 years only, and we're already in this situation. It's really terrible. Just the other day, I happened to call Scarlett's office. I was quite shocked when they told me she had already quit. Why didn't she discuss such an important matter with me beforehand? Why does she still continue to pretend to go to work with such a straight face? It was too much of a shock, but thinking back, there were other odd signs. Every morning, when she was saying goodbye to me before work, she would ask, "What time is it today? Are you planning on going out for a drink? Any business trips?" I noticed that she started monitoring my every move. Before, she used to call me when she left work, but now I never hear from Scarlett. I still don't know what she's up to, but it can't be anything good. I had the whole weekend to think about it, but I couldn't come up with anything. I decided that thinking about it was not going to get me anywhere. I got help from a colleague who usually listens to me and helps me out, and we agreed to keep an eye on Scarlett during the day to see where she was going. I apologized to my colleague, but he told me that if I followed her, it would be obvious. So he offered to help and report to me if he saw anything even remotely fishy. Meanwhile, I asked Scarlett's former supervisor why she resigned. Whatever the reason was, I would be quite shocked if she was having an affair. A few days later, my colleague followed Scarlett for almost a day. I was at work as usual that day, so I asked my colleague about it later. I saw that my coworker was having a hard time saying it, and I immediately thought it was weird. At the same time, I felt my face grow pale. The flow of events was this. Scarlett and I left our home first, and took the train together. My colleague started tailing us from the station, and since Scarlett has never met the colleague, there was no worry about being caught. Scarlett's former workplace required a transfer, so she got off the train at the midway point, while I went straight to my office. The colleague got off at the same station as Scarlett and continued tailing her. After a while, a WhatsApp message arrived from the colleague, stating that Scarlett had gotten off at a station that was not near her former workplace. Scarlett walked from that station to a store about 10 minutes away. She entered the shop after unlocking the key by herself. I won't go into the details of the shop, but it's not a restaurant or anything. It's the kind of place where rich people would stop by for a treat. The colleague helping me started waiting at a fast food restaurant across from the shop. From there, it seemed that he had a good view of the inside of the store Scarlett had went to. It seems that Scarlett started doing something resembling office work by herself. According to the colleague, it appeared that she was working normally, and at this point, there was nothing out of the ordinary, as if she simply just had changed jobs. Scarlett seemed to have been doing paperwork nonchalantly for a while. At about 10 o'clock, a young man walked into the store and sat down at the desk with Scarlett. The man was quite casual, so my colleague thought he was the manager or owner. The man sat at the desk in the back, and Scarlett sat at the desk in the front. They didn't seem to be talking to each other and seemed to be doing their jobs. But after about an hour, the guy sat back down next to Scarlett. They started up a pleasant conversation. Scarlett then stood up and closed all the curtains in the store. The colleague patiently waited during this time, and after about an hour and a half, the man opened the curtains and left the store immediately. Scarlett hastily secured the store, clutching only her purse, and ran after the man in a light trot. At this point, the colleague became speechless. When I urged him to continue, he reluctantly told me. Scarlett ran to the man, and without hesitation, she took his hand. but soon the man took her hand away and lightly smacked my wife's butt as if in jest. Then about a half hour later, the guy went back to the store first. He opened the store, and Scarlett returned a short time later and entered the store. The store wasn't busy with customers coming and going. By the time 4 p.m. rolled around, the place was almost empty of customers, and now the man started to close the curtains. The next time the curtains opened was an hour later. Because I was listening in a dazed state, my colleague started to speak. "Maybe they were working on something," he said, trying to encourage me with his words. He laughed wryly as he said that. Then, a short time after the curtains opened, Scarlett left the store, and my colleague chased after her. Scarlett then made a normal stop at the grocery store before heading home. Several times along the way, she seemed to be happily talking to someone on her phone. At the fast food restaurant, I was grateful to my colleague who had worked so hard. To be honest, before I heard his story, I still had faith in Scarlett deep in the bottom of my heart, but I already considered what she did as complete infidelity. When I asked my colleague about the restaurant and the man's features, I quickly realized who Scarlett's partner was. Scarlett's partner was an ex-boyfriend. In fact, before I started dating Scarlett, I had a fight with this man. I met Scarlett about 6 months after I started college. It was totally love at first sight. But at the same time, Scarlett had a boyfriend, so we just became friends, and I didn't make any special advances on her. Her boyfriend at the time was a man with a strong personality, a bit selfish, and Scarlett seemed to have a hard time with him because they had dated and broken up several times, and even had arguments that sometimes resulted in light violence. And I acted as a friend to her, and she started consulting me on many things. Scarlett became interested in me after losing interest in her boyfriend. Scarlett said happily when she started dating me that she was happy being in such a relaxed relationship. Even though it was such an unpleasant thought, I once asked her why we had been together for 2 years. Scarlett said, "I don't know why. I don't know either," she said, and after that, Scarlett received job offers from companies and we graduated. Around that time, the ex suddenly proposed to Scarlett. It was so abrupt that Scarlett and both of us were upset. Scarlett's dismay was particularly great. I was so distressed by my thoughts that I got a fever and went to bed all the time. Towards Scarlett, I wondered why she was so bothered about someone she'd already been broken up with. I wondered why her ex-boyfriend was such a big part of her life. I felt angry that I couldn't do anything about it. However, this was a matter of Scarlett's feelings, and I decided to trust her and leave all the decisions to her. Despite the uncertainty of finding a job and graduation, Scarlett ultimately chose to be with me. And then, after that, we dated for 2 years and then got married. We had a good marriage. At no time during that period did any mention of an ex-boyfriend come out of Scarlett's mouth. But then, she quit her job secretly to start working with her ex-boyfriend. While being quite shocked, I started gathering evidence. I arranged for a detective and scheduled a fake business trip for the following weekend. I decided to spend 1 night and 2 days at a business hotel near my workplace while waiting. I was tired of pretending to be normal, so these 2 days were actually a bit relaxing. And if the investigation during these 2 days reveals that she was having an affair, I will start preparing for a divorce. If not, I'll talk to Scarlett and the man she's with, and make sure they are not allowed to enter the store again. If there was a good reason why she was seeing her ex-boyfriend, I would consider rebuilding our relationship. Then, on the first day of the fake business trip, the detective contacted me. Scarlett went to her ex-boyfriend's store as usual, and after it closed, they had a meal together. Afterwards, they both returned home to our place. Around 4 p.m., the man left the room by himself. Because I couldn't confirm for sure that it was infidelity, I couldn't say it was an affair. And of course, I didn't have any evidence. But after hearing that, I felt confused and wasn't feeling like myself. The next day, if the same behavior continues, I'll take an afternoon off and together with the detective staff, I stated that I wanted to raid the home and get the evidence of their infidelity. On the other end of the phone, the staff seemed unenthusiastic. But when I said I wanted to make sure with my own eyes, the staff reluctantly agreed. And the next day, there was a message that Scarlett was at work as usual. Thinking that it would probably be the same route as yesterday, I prepared to join forces with the detective staff. We learned that Scarlett and her ex-boyfriend had entered the house, so I bought a video camera along with the detective staff, and we quietly entered through the locked front door. When I saw the two shadows of them visible from the entrance, although I was supposed to be calm, I seemed to have lost myself for a moment, and I was restrained by the staff. Later on, when I heard the story, he said I was about to rush into the room, shaking my clenched fist. After that, the staff and I approached the living room at the end of the hallway, trying not to make any sounds with our footsteps. I peeked inside through the glass inset in the door, and saw two people making love on the sofa. When I encountered that pivotal moment, it didn't feel real to me somehow, even though it was right in front of my eyes. I felt like I was looking at someone that was my wife, but also not my wife. I could even hear Scarlett's voice through the door. We probably watched the scene for a dozen seconds or so. The staff lightly tapped me on the shoulder, opened the door, and I approached the two of them while they were in the middle of making love. "Hey, what are you doing?" Instantly, the two of them turned to face us. I still clearly remember Scarlett's expression at that moment. Scarlett screamed while trying to hide her face, and her ex-boyfriend stood up silently and leaned back as though his waist had fallen out. Scarlett hurriedly gathered up all the clothes she had taken off and hid behind them. Scarlett's face grew pale. I could see from a distance that her body was shaking slightly. I picked up her ex's jacket off the floor and threw it at her. I told her to come to the next room. A female staff member waiting at the door took Scarlett to another room. This was part of the plan, in order to listen to the circumstances in separate rooms and record everything. If the two side stories were at odds with each other, the sanctions against them would be even heavier. After cross-checking what we heard, we generally agreed on what they were saying. The circumstances were something like this. They met again by chance about a year ago at a bank, where they had each stopped by. At that point, neither of them had seemed to have any ulterior motives. Apparently, her ex was getting ready to open a restaurant at the time. Scarlett also wanted to simply support her ex, who was trying to pursue his dreams. At that point, they exchanged WhatsApp and exchanged many messages with each other before the shop opening. The content was mostly about the store. For Scarlett, who was in the same college department in college as her ex, the conversation with her ex, who was moving towards opening his shop, was something thrilling that excited her heart. However, Scarlett still felt a sense of guilt towards me, and was unsure whether to talk or not to her ex. But she convinced herself that her ex had no ulterior motive, and that it was just a conversation between friends. However, over time, Scarlett's exchange with her ex changed into something exciting. Scarlett was trying to convince herself that her conversation with her ex-boyfriend was just simple, enjoyable moment that made her heart flutter, and that there was no guilt towards me. But eventually, their interactions changed into something more exciting, and her feelings for him began to resurface. They resumed their physical relationship only 1 month later. At first, her boyfriend was pushy. On this, Scarlett never defended her ex in this regards, and her ex admitted as such. But it led to the two of them seeing each other regularly. Scarlett said that she had developed romantic feelings towards her ex-boyfriend, along with an irresistible attraction towards him. It seemed easy to bring Scarlett on board as a staff member and starting the store, so Scarlett quit her job abruptly, and it was best to tell me about her changing job when the time came. If she were to tell me now, she feared that I would get angry and might destroy the store. Her ex-boyfriend said, "I didn't break up with you, Scarlett, because we hated each other when we were in school. We both knew we'd regret it if we broke up. But I left because I thought it was the best thing to do at the time," he said. He also said that he found out that he was unable to have children when he entered university. He told Scarlett right after they started dating, and she agreed to date him with mutual consent. However, when a friend told him about Scarlett's love for children, he was quite distressed. That's when Scarlett told him about me. He said he decided to part ways because he thought it would make Scarlett happy, but her ex immediately regretted it. He said that there were times when he was feeling down, but surprisingly, it was Scarlett who supported him during those times. He said that he was where he is now because it was Scarlett who cheered him on to chase his dreams. Of course, this was during the time they were already dating, but I had no idea. After hearing that much, I now understood. Scarlett married me because she wanted children. Additionally, unlike her self-employed ex-boyfriend, she now had a more stable life. In the end, it wasn't because she loved me more than anyone else, when I thought back to it. For a while after marrying me, I thought Scarlett's feelings were mostly for me. But then she met her ex again, and things fell apart, and this is the result. Scarlett had never shown me her true colors, maybe not even once. All the happy memories of the past have changed. I realized that, and so I easily decided to get a divorce. When I served her with the divorce papers I had brought with me, Scarlett was also crying, but she readily signed it. It was submitted immediately the next day. When I explained the situation to Scarlett's parents, thousands of dollars were transferred as alimony to me a few days later. I figured that if I took money from her parents, it would be hard for me to communicate with them, so I decided to accept it without telling them. Thus, Scarlett became an ex-wife. I charged a fair amount of alimony to the ex-boyfriend. Her ex readily agreed to pay. They also had to give up the store to pay the alimony. The ex still seems to think there was no substitute for his love with Scarlett. Scarlett is still missing her stable life. Sometime after the divorce, I hear from her every day. Calls, WhatsApp messages, whining every day. I've moved, so I can't come to your house. I've always been a person who wouldn't budge no matter what. I'm a little shaken by Scarlett's change, but unlike her romantic ex, I think Scarlett is much more calculating. Sometimes I dream of happier times, and it gets me down. Scarlett, whom I thought I liked, turned out to be nowhere to be found. I am going to go change my phone today, so Scarlett can't call me anymore, and I'm going to start a new life.